So cursed to do it with the camera, with the light down here. Hi guys, welcome. My setup is crazy. I should take a picture and then show you because I'm using my cell phone and a music stand. This is my microphone that typically I use for recording my cello because I'm a musician. What I want to do, because it's been a long time since I've used this YouTube channel at all for anything. I've been vegan for 9 or 10 years now. I'm 24. I decided to go vegan when I was 15 in 10th grade. I had been vegetarian from when I was 13. And I'm wearing my Animals Are Not Ingredients shirt I got for this one from... I went to Vegandale, which is like a vegan food festival that goes to different cities in the United States. I don't know if it does stuff outside the United States. I haven't looked. I live in the US, so that's what I know about. I went with my sister over the summer because she is also vegan, and I think she's the only other vegan I know, despite having lived in Pennsylvania, New York, and Southern California. Okay, no, there's one other. One of my professors is also vegan, but I rarely see him, and I don't, know him. We don't hang out. Anyways, we're going to start. This is a post from 2 hours ago. Today is January 25th, and it is 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. This is from r/askvegans. It says, the title is, what do you think about the phrase, dairy cows must be kept happy or else they wouldn't produce milk? It's a genuine question. Do not downvote. I was browsing Reddit and saw someone on r/xvegan say that dairy cows aren't stressed because if they aren't happy and kept in stress-free conditions, then they wouldn't be making milk. They said that this shows that when people consume dairy, they aren't supporting, quote, unhappy cows, like vegans claim. What are your thoughts on this? Before I read any of the comments, I just want to say a cow doesn't have to be happy or unhappy to produce milk. A cow has to give birth to produce milk. Whether they're happy or unhappy, just like human beings, they don't just naturally produce milk every day, all the time. Just like a human person would have to do, is you do not produce milk until you have a baby and you give birth, and then you start producing milk in order to provide for that baby and for that child. Which I want to say right away, because I think a lot of people who aren't vegan or who have not thought about it, and hey, I wasn't vegan. There was a long time in my life I wasn't vegan. And they kind of push this narrative that cows just produce milk. That's just something they do. Grass grows, cows produce milk. That's not true. They produce milk when they have a child, just like human people do when they have a child. An unhappy cow versus a happy cow isn't going to be producing milk that much differently. And also, it's not like the farmers in the big bad dairy industry are like, oh, we gotta give our cows 10 pets a day and feed them a treat, and then we're making them happy so they produce milk. That really has nothing to do with it. Whether or not the cow is happy or unhappy, typically they're stressed out because they're being forced to repeatedly get pregnant and have birth in order to continuously produce milk. Because if you have a cow in the dairy industry, you have this cow, and for any length of time that it is not producing milk, it is not of use to you. You're spending money on food for it, on water for it, on housing it, where it is not producing milk for you to sell. So the cows are going to be stressed because they're repeatedly being artificially impregnated and then giving birth so that they continue to produce milk, because they don't do that ambiently. Bringing into account whether an animal would be happy or unhappy because of this type of action is kind of pointless, because in veganism, at the end of the day, for the moral standpoint of it, it's this cow isn't getting a choice. They're not getting to consent to this action. We are forcefully impregnating this cow so that it can give birth and produce milk that we can take to sell as a product to human beings when this milk is intended for their calf. It's just kind of weird to be oh, we're not supporting unhappy cows. Okay, you're supporting cows that are being forcefully impregnated and then being forced to repeatedly have calves, have to give birth so that they continue to produce milk, because they produce milk just like a human would produce milk, where you have to give birth first, because it's being produced for the newborn. It's not being produced for someone else. Anyway, let's get into some of these comments. The top comment on this one right now is it's propaganda targeted at the uneducated. Cows produce milk for their offspring. Yeah, that's what I was saying. And I don't really fault anyone for believing that cows just produce milk, because the dairy industry pushes that so extremely in media and like in everything. Like, you play video games. I play Stardew Valley. I play Fields Mystria. The cows just produce milk. Like, that is the item you get from that animal in game. In Minecraft, you can use a bucket anytime on any cow to get milk from it, whether it has given birth or not. Not that they would even track that. I don't know. It was just a belief I didn't even realize I held for so long, where it was like, yeah, cows just produce milk. That's not true. Cows don't just produce milk all the time. They have to get pregnant and give birth, just like a human does. This next comment says, I don't see why it matters. I'm strongly against the practice of forcibly impregnating someone, slaughtering her children, stealing her milk from her body, and then slaughtering her once she's too old to repeat the process. Yeah, that's more factual language, like more statement language. I was being a little soft with my words. But yeah, the whole moral dilemma is like, we're forcing a creature to get pregnant, we're forcing it to give birth, and then we are taking the product it is creating for its offspring to be sold to humans. And then once they are no longer able to produce enough milk or high quality enough milk, they are killed. And that doesn't even bring into the equation the calves. If the calf is a female, it is kept and raised typically to be another vessel to give birth and produce milk. And if it's a male calf, typically they're just slaughtered because they are not of any monetary value to a dairy farm. And they continue to say, the question of how stressed she was at the time I stole her milk is a deflection of the problem of violating her bodily autonomy and treating her as a disposable object. Yes. Again, in veganism, it's a whole thing where, at least I don't believe in any difference in value of a human life versus an animal life. They're the same. I don't think they should be treated differently. So if I wouldn't do something to a person, why would I do it to an animal? I wouldn't. And that is what my moral ground is on that. Someone else says, of all the ways animals are mistreated, the dairy industry seems to be the most inhumane. Besides suffering the same mistreatment as all the other animals used, they suffer the abuse of being impregnated and having their offspring taken away repeatedly. It's horrible. Yeah, that's the whole issue with the dairy industry to a vegan person, is that it's just inhumane and it's terrible. And I was vegetarian for a long time before going vegan because I didn't really understand, that cows just didn't produce milk, which once you learn that, it's like, why didn't I ever think about it? But the world doesn't want you to think about it. The dairy industry certainly doesn't want you to think about it. So, let's go to the next one. This is just one from the r/vegan subreddit. It says, are any of you members of the, quote, forever single vegan club? And they said, dating as an over 40-year-old vegan trans woman is really tough. Making it worse is that it seems like all of my friends, vegans and trans people, all seem to be partnered already. It's tough to just sit there and watch other people being happy in their relationships. I have met few vegan trans people, and the ones I have met I just didn't click with. Even if I give up on finding a vegan trans person, I still have to deal with one. Just like other cis people, the vast majority of cis vegans don't seem to be interested in dating trans people. And two, all the things I have to draw boundaries around and put up with dating a carnist trans person. And if you're unfamiliar, carnist is just a word for people that consume animal products. They ended off with, it just sucks, can anyone relate? There are some comments here. Before I read those, I'm going to react a little bit myself too. I've been vegan for a while. I've been trans. I've been living as a transgender man for 6 years now. I've dated cis people. I've dated trans people. I have dated non-vegans. I don't think I've ever dated a vegan because I don't know if I've ever met one. And it can be difficult. It's up to everyone to make their own decision on this. For me as a trans person, it's not important to me that I date another transgender person. I've had good experiences with cis people and with trans people, and I've had horrible experiences with cis people and with trans people as far as like being partners. And sometimes you think it'd be better like, oh well, I'll date someone who's also transgender because they will understand my experience better, they won't be as transphobic. And for me, that personally wasn't the case. One of my transgender partners in the past was the most transphobic person I was ever with, and she was a horrible partner. So to me, there's really no difference in dating a cisgender person versus dating a transgender person in terms of expecting to be treated better as a trans person. But I know that for some individuals, they feel more comfortable and safe with somebody who is also transgender because they have that inherent understanding of how it feels to be trans and to exist in society as a transgender individual. To me, that's not something that's super important, and I haven't personally experienced a difference between a cisgender partner and a transgender partner having any better understanding of my personal experience and journey and being more or less transphobic to me. As far as the vegan things go, I've dated plenty of people who aren't vegan. To me, it's difficult because veganism is such a huge, like, moral pillar in my life and for me. And to have a disconnect with a partner or someone I'm really, really close to on something so fundamental to my core values can be quite difficult. In the past, it's never been the defining reason for a breakup, but it's definitely always been part of it. I spent a lot of time for most of my existence, I've been around only non-vegans, only non-vegetarians, like totally surrounded by carnists. My parents aren't vegan or vegetarian, but I went to school, all of my friends were carnists. I went to college, everyone I knew was carnist. I went to my second college because I'm in graduate school right now. I know one vegan, everyone else is carnist. I think I know one vegetarian, but it was just so normal to be surrounded by everyone being different than me that I was, making friends with because I didn't want to be totally alone, making friends with, and then I also was in partnerships with people who were not vegan. It did become difficult at a certain point where, for me, I know I never want to live in a house where there are products that aren't vegan. I don't want any type of furniture or decoration made of animal products. I do not want any animal products in a fridge that if I live there, I don't want those things in my home. So that realization, and also realizations around, I don't really like going to food-based events where like we're celebrating and everyone's happy, but there's a lot of non-vegan items. I find it personally hard to celebrate in that circumstance because I'm surrounded by so much, to me, like gore and death and like sacrifice. It's just not celebratory, and I struggle to feel happy, which conflicts with like being happy that I'm hanging out with people I care about and my friends and my partner. But then it's kind of being extremely soured by the disgust I feel around like the food and the drinks or what have you. The Forever Single Vegan Club is hard because people who aren't vegan don't understand, or they tend not to see how to vegan people, at least moral vegans who are in it as more than a diet thing. It's an extremely large part of our core values and beliefs and like how we view the world and how we think the world should work and how we run our lives. So trying to share your life with somebody who is so detached from that can be quite hard. And for a lot of people, it does end up being a deal breaker at a certain point. I date people who aren't vegan, but then I also know, like, I don't want to live with you because I have this hard line at I'm not going to be in a house that has non-vegan products in it for any reason. I would also never give an ultimatum. There's a partner I ended things with a handful of months ago where there were a lot of other things going on, but one of them was also that he was really, really into like trying new foods and trying new restaurants and like traveling and watching food shows on TV. Like that was a big thing for him. And it really grossed me out, which is fine. You can have like different interests and hobbies that your partner doesn't like. That's fine. But I got to the point where I was like, I can't this is just too big because food is so important to you, or like what you think food is so important to you, and then I have mine that is so important to me. I don't have faith in this going anywhere, and I wasn't going to be like, hey, you have to either be vegan to stay with me or we break up. I was just like, I don't think this is going to work. I don't think it's right to like date someone for whatever, 6 months, just a random number, and be like, okay, if you want to keep dating me, then you're going to have to go vegan, or you're going to have to be in an open relationship, or you're going to have to decide like that you're polyamorous. Like, you can't make somebody change something so big like that for you. They need to do that for themselves. And if you're having to ask someone to do something like that, then you just need to break up. So the Forever Single Vegan Club, it can be hard. And this person is also transgender, so I feel them on that, even though I personally don't only wish to date trans people. Someone at the bottom said 3 minutes ago, this is hot off the press, I used a bunch of YouGov polls to estimate how many options I have nearby. That's crazy, but so interesting. For me, the criteria are lesbian, accepting of a trans partner, within 10 years of my age, vegan, single, and within my city. It came up with 14 people. I asked an AI, okay, girl, gross. Might as well become a monk. That's crazy. Oh, okay, I refreshed because it's so new. Someone said, yes, 36-year-old gay cis man vegan here. I've tried dating non-vegans and it clearly is not for me, so I'm holding out for someone who aligns with my values. Yeah, that's also fair. Someone said, I feel you. I mean, I'm only 18, so it may not be as hard, but being non-binary makes it hard, and it feels pretty much my only option when I feel like searching for a partner again is online dating, which sucks so hard. I just want to have a meet cute with someone in a cafe. I thought about getting a pin or something with a little vegan logo, so that maybe someday somewhere, somehow, another single vegan will see it and shoot their shot. I've always dreamed about seeing somebody with some sort of vegan Panera. I think they need paraphernalia, but they said Panera-phernalia. But some vegan accessory or item in public and flirting with them. And yeah, I'm on that. I hate online dating. Sorry for the ASMR. Back when I tried it, tried the apps or whatever, I was always just like, this sucks. It doesn't help that I'm also aromantic and asexual, so it's like a lot of times the apps are people looking to hook up, or maybe if you do get into a partnership, they're also looking for something physical pretty quickly. And I'm like, try never. But yeah, it can be difficult to find somebody who aligns with your values. But I do think that is also the case for anyone who has different moral values. Like there are people who are Christian who only want to date other Christians. So they obviously have this specific dating pool, and sometimes it can be hard for them to find someone they click with that is also Christian. I'm not religious, so I'm just using that as an example. I can't speak to how difficult or what that's like, but my point is that anyone with any sort of specific set of moral values or beliefs or way of life that would need somebody who is also within that same niche or community, or like has that same value, it's going to be harder to find somebody. Anyway, I talked about that one for a long time. Oh my God, I'm losing my voice. Hold on. Okay, that one kind of went into like trans stuff. So I'm going to read this next one, which is trans. It's from r/FTM, which I think this subreddit had a huge like drama. I don't know. I'm online, but I'm not like online enough to keep up with all the drama all the time, or if I do find it interesting, I forget about it in like 2 hours. This one's kind of long, so buckle up. We might end off with this one. So it says, passing, living stealth, and wondering what it means to be trans as you get older. It's a discussion post. Here we go. I had a party last weekend, and my trans mask friend introduced me to some trans women. We were all sitting around chatting, and I was being the flaming gay that I am, waving my wrists and serving appetizers. I forgot how to say that word. I'm not going to try. Serving appetizers with the energy of a 1950s hostess. At some point, the conversation moved to transness, and the main girl flipped her hair all catty and gestured to me, saying, "Cover his ears, this conversation's not for you," and laughing. It was all in jest, but the realization that I wasn't being perceived as trans amongst my own people really took me aback in that moment. Being stealth among cis people is always such a big conversation, but the idea of being unintentionally stealth amongst other trans people is just a really bizarre feeling. Of course, I immediately outed myself and said I am trans, which was met with more giggles and the standard, "Oh my god, I fully thought you were cis, I had no idea." It was a really funny experience because I am stealth at work, and all in all, I really appreciate the privilege of not having to out myself to strangers, but that this same privilege would make me invisible in a trans space never really occurred to me. It seems to go hand in hand with this feeling of being more and more post-transition as the years go on. Don't get me wrong, transition is rarely linear, and in some ways you'll never stop transitioning, and few people ever totally erase every single ounce of dysphoria from their lives. But at a certain point, when you've done the heavy lifting of transition, you are just maintaining day to day. All the inner outpouring of anxieties and interventions that litter transforms across the internet get quieter and more mellow, and the things which once required so much thought and effort no longer seem to demand anything at all. At that point, I think you look at how tilted towards those early or in-between years of transition so many of our community's conversations are, and you just wonder, what now? Where do I fit in if I do at all? I feel kinship through trans history, through the cause of trans liberation, but as time goes on, I remember more and more faintly what it's like to exist as a visibly trans person. And then I'm left with this sense that I'm not fully trans anymore. Maybe transsexual, perhaps of trans experience, but not trans the way most queer people I meet are actively, visibly trans. It almost feels like to use the same adjective to describe our situation is like pretending my experience is what it was 9 years ago, which just isn't the truth anymore. I'd love to hear if other people feel similarly and what your thoughts are on settling into your transness as you get older. Okay, again, before I get into the comments, I'm going to react a little bit personally. I'm in a weird middle ground of being transgender. It sounds so odd to say, but I'm a trans man. I spent a lot of time not passing. By a lot of time, I mean the majority of my being trans. So for the past 6 years, I haven't really passed. When I moved from the East Coast to Southern California for grad school, and I first got to grad school and I came here, my first few weeks of classes, I didn't know anybody here. Nobody had known me before, nobody had heard of me before. I was in a new city on the other side of the country. And I didn't realize this, but everyone thought I was just a cis gay man, which was shocking because I'm at a school that is really full of queer individuals, and I'm a music student in a liberal arts school. So there's a lot of queer people, there's a lot of trans people, and I had assumed that, perhaps wrongly, other queer people would, be able to just know or to notice. And I also hadn't passed before then in my life. I had not passed. So I was just operating under the assumption that everyone who ever met me or saw me or knew me, whether it was for the first time or for the 10th, that they knew I was transgender or that they thought I was a woman. And it's very odd because there is still this distinction I experience. When I travel back to the East Coast to visit family, I don't pass on the East Coast. Everyone that I run into, like strangers, they think I'm a woman. When I'm here in Southern California, everyone thinks I'm just a gay man. And it could be the area too. I'm from a very, very rural area on the East Coast, and it's a very traditional place. So I don't look like a traditional cis man. So people are going to typically look at me and think that I'm a woman, usually a queer woman. I got mistaken most often as a lesbian for 5 years on the East Coast. And then I moved here and everyone thinks I'm a gay man because the stereotypes of masculinity, at least in this area surrounding Los Angeles, are very different than what they are in a rural farm town on the East Coast. And it kind of threw me off because, I'm not getting into this debate, but there is the whole bathroom debate. And for me, because I never passed, I always felt more comfortable just continuing to use the women's restroom because I did not want to use the men's room. I didn't feel comfortable or safe using the men's room. And I wasn't making any women feel unsafe because they all thought I was just a woman in the women's room. But I came here and I was using the ladies' room, when I went out and when I was at school. And for that reason, because everyone thought I was man, they started to wonder if I was a trans woman. So people started thinking I was a trans woman for like a week or two. And then someone told me that. And I was so shocked and taken aback. I was like, I'm not a trans woman. Like I'm a trans man. And they were like, you should use the men's room. And I was like, what? It's a very weird middle place to be where you're like unable to know in any given circumstance if you're passing or not. And I imagine that as you get further into passing, you do get excluded from transgender spaces because they're all very focused on people who are visibly trans and dealing with being visibly trans, which is very difficult. I, like this person, what is their name? I'll just call them Charlie. Like Charlie, I do tend to just out myself, especially if it's other trans people or even other queer people, because I don't care about being stealth. Like, it's not important to me. It doesn't give me a lot of dysphoria. I get dysphoric when people assume that I'm a woman or that they see me as one. But I don't get dysphoric over disclosing the fact that I'm transgender because I don't want to hide that information about myself, depending on who it is or what the circumstances is, of course, assuming it is safe, especially within discussions around transgender people, or even in discussions around like women's health and feminism. I prefer to disclose that I'm transgender so that I do not appear to be a cis man speaking on women's issues as if I haven't experienced them, because I have and still do experience women's issues in the medical field, misogyny in the real world and everywhere, because it's everywhere. For me, being transgender and having like grown up as a woman, like there are certain things that socially, because there are names for them, I'm attached to. Like, I have a younger sister. I'm an older sister. Like, I will be an older sister until the day that I die. Because for all of the time that you spend with your siblings when you're, younger and before you move out and before you go to college, to me, that is a lot of the time where you spend building that sibling connection and that bond and like all the experiences you have together. I was always an older sister for all of those experiences. And it feels weird to discredit that, because I don't think being an older brother is the same thing or is the same experience. I am an older brother now. Like, I don't know, from age 20 on, I'm an older brother. But for all the fundamentals of growing up and living in my family's house with my younger sister, I was an older sister. And I'm not dysphoric about that. And I don't feel any type of way about that. And I wouldn't go back and change it either. I think it could also depend on where you live. I lived in a rural area, again, like that was more traditional. So I definitely believe there are differences in how you're socialized and how you're raised and what things are told to you and like how you're treated, depending on if you are raised as a man or a woman. I think it'd be good eventually over time to just raise children as a person and not have these differences between a man and a woman being raised, or like, a girl and a boy. But I would be lying to myself to say there weren't those differences. So being raised as a girl and like living as a woman has shaped me in a lot of ways and has shaped my experience. So I will always choose to out myself if it's safe to do so, depending on the conversation and the context, to be like, hey, I want to contribute to this conversation, my experience of growing up as a woman and being treated as one, and like living these experiences as a woman. So I want to contribute to this discussion, even though I'm passing as a cis man to you. I want you to know I'm a transgender man, and I actually can want to contribute to this, my experience that I had as a woman. And you definitely still fit in because you had those experiences. And this person said, that experience of being visibly trans was 9 years ago. So maybe at a certain point you've outgrown it and you don't really want to be in those conversations, or you feel like you don't have modern context to contribute to those kinds of conversations, which is also totally fair. When I'm older, maybe I won't really want to talk about it anymore, because it's like, okay, well, when I was visibly trans in 2022, that's probably going to be a lot different than someone being visibly trans in 2040. So maybe I don't have anything to contribute or anything to say, and that's totally fine. But I do think wanting to identify yourself to your community has nothing wrong with it. And I'm also, I'm a working performing artist, And my identity and who I am and the things I've lived through are in my art in some way. Like, they're in my music, they're in my playing, they're in my composing, they're in my improvisation. I would be doing myself a disservice to me, like, in my opinion, in my view of myself, my opinion, I would be doing my work and my thoughts and feelings and artistic practice a disservice to not share that is a fundamental core thing behind who I am, what I'm doing, the choices I make. But everyone's situation is different. So I really like this post that they made because it is an interesting conversation to get into. It's like, once you pass and then, you haven't been visibly trans for 9 or 10 years, what do you do? Like, where's the community? The community's there. They're just harder to see, literally, because they pass as cisgender people now. Let's get into some of these comments. I know I rambled forever, but I want to look at some of these and see if they're good. This one's funny. They tagged their comment old and tired. So I want to read this one. I continue to strongly identify as trans. I feel you on the transsexual thing and do kind of wish we could reclaim it. I am, however, deeply uncomfortable with trans sex and have had negative interactions with those espousing it, which is ironic given my present experience and perspective, and that of many long transitioned friends, is not so far from theirs. I've struggled a lot with trans spaces for a long time. Many have simply eclipsed their usefulness to me because they tend to be heavily focused on the practicalities of transition. But there also has been this narrative of how it was just terrible to be trans, 5 years ago. And anyone who transitioned before that was horribly retrograde. But at the same time, I'm supposed to put my gender in some small, neat box and tell you how binary or not I am. That's not gender liberation, people. No one actually wants to hear my experience because, it's too challenging. It's like my role in spaces like these is to keep my mouth shut and be the perfect assimilated stealth man who has ridden off into the sunset of gender normativity and left my transness behind. Okay, so that one was a bit thick, but that is an interesting experience. I haven't personally experienced where they want you to just be stealth and discard your trans history. I don't think that's something we should be pushing in transgender spaces where it's like, oh, well, you pass, so I don't want to hear it. That's just such a negative thing. That's not what this person is saying. That's what this person is saying they have experienced. And I said it in a very crass way. That's not what they said. But I can say that I think I've seen, people who might be envious or jealous of people who do pass, and then they don't, the individual doesn't pass, and they're just like, well, you pass, you have X, Y, and Z attributes, so you pass, I don't want to hear from you, whatever. This is only for people who don't pass and who are actually suffering. Again, that's not my thought. That's things I've seen. So, yeah, we shouldn't push that. It sucks to feel jealous and envious and negative, and we've all been there. I've been there. Doesn't mean I said anything about it. Of course, I've had moments where I'm jealous, where I'm like, oh my God, they're finally starting HRT. And then I kind of hated myself for feeling jealous about it, or for feeling envious about it. But it is natural to feel that way. So I think you should process that feeling. Just be like, yeah, I know I'm jealous of this person because, John Smith Online has just started HRT, or they got top surgery and their family supports them and mine doesn't. And comparing like that is just going to make you miserable, and it's not going to make you feel better about your transition. It's not going to help you transition. It's not going to help you feel like more of a man or a woman or gender fluid or non-binary, however you want to feel. It's not going to make you feel better in any way. And it's not going to help your transition in any way. And I've caught myself in those moments of just being like, you know what? I'm going to choose to be proud for this person and be happy for this person. And then I'm going to move on. I'm going to go about my day because I'm still going to be trans, whether or not I'm upset over this or not. And I'm still going to be doing everything that I can do in order to transition, even if it's not what this person can do. Or if this person has more resources, money, and support than I do, I'm still going to be trans and transition. It's just going to be a different experience. And it does suck that people feel so miserable that they feel this need to go and be like, oh my God, well, you pass, your thoughts and opinions don't matter anymore. You're done being trans. There's never a done being trans. thing as well. Let me just say that. That's something I believe. People can have a different opinion on that, but I don't think you're ever done being transgender. I'm going to be transgender forever. Like, I can never go back and be born as a boy and be born as a man and be raised as a young boy and, you know, be in boys' sports in middle school instead of the girls' ones. And like, whatever the stereotypes are, I'm just listing off things that happened in my hometown that I know that boys experienced that I didn't. It's just like, I'm not going to go back and have that. I'm not going to go back and change it. Like, I can't. That's literally impossible. I'm going to be transgender forever. I transitioned. I went through these things in order to be the person I am now. Just like anyone goes through things to be the person they are today. You're not just not something anymore. I don't know. Whether you're stealth or not. I could be the most passing man, transgender man in the history of the world. And that doesn't mean I'm not transgender anymore. That's what I believe. I'll be transgender for the rest of my life. Anyway, that was long. My voice is going. I've got a really weak voice. If you can't tell, it's super, super weak. But I plan to read. Got a crazy title. I'm going to read more of these at some point. Definitely more vegan ones and more trans ones. And some other like classics like Am I the Asshole? Am I Overreacting? I'm going to try to stick to topics that I'm familiar with, that I know, and that I can have an educated opinion on, or at least perhaps just an education in experience, not professional. But if you want to debate me, don't. I don't debate. I just will ghost you. I'm here to share my opinions. I hate debating. Like, I hate it, so I'm not going to do it. You can debate yourself in my comment section and have fun, I guess. If you have opinions, you can share them. I share mine. Lord knows I share mine. Anyway, bye, y'all.